Thank you. Good afternoon. The planning department has been in existence since Wayne County since the mid-'60s, when the commissioners at that time first decided to contract with the state to develop a zoning ordinance around the schools, and the first subdivision ordinance that we had. And at that time, it was just a part-time person who was under contract with the state. Currently have a planning board, as three of you well know. The 7 members that you see, Julian Aycock is our newest member, and he was appointed last year. Mike Aycock is our current chairman. Daniel Taylor was just, and he was re-elected last month. Daniel Taylor was elected as our new vice chair. And they all, of course, as most of you know, serve staggered terms.
Could I interrupt you on that?
Yes, sir.
What is that BOC 1?
That's the commissioner's districts that those persons live in.
Oh, okay.
It's just for your own information. So we have a person living at 2 and 1, 2 and 5, 1 and 2, 4 and 6.
Okay.
They all live in mine, Joe.
And they all live in Mr. Aycock's, that's right.
That's good.
Board of Adjustment, some of you may not know, is what it is a separate board from the planning board. It actually is authorized to grant variances for some of these ordinances, for zoning and stormwater ordinances. But this group, the Board of Commissioners, sits as a Board of Adjustment, and that you would be sworn in if we have a case this year for that. And it would be, you would meet normally after your commissioners meet on a case-by-case basis. Chip, that you just saw, of course, that works for me as a GIS coordinator. He also is assistant planning director in his spare time. We've got Robin, who works as secretary. Julian is our enforcement officer. He goes out in the field on a daily basis, making sure that people, when they're setting up houses or mobile homes, are not too close to a property line. There's not junk vehicles on the property. Does the annual inspections of mobile home parks and BMPs. And then we've got Brandon Hill, who works as a planning technician in our office. Some of the things that we do on a daily basis: assign, as you see, assign street addresses, locations or flood areas, zoned areas, stormwater ordinances, review all those, answer calls over the telephones, and also respond to citizens' complaints. The part of the 301 system that Chip mentioned previously, some of those will be directed directly to our office, and we'll be responding to those. Ongoing, that's not necessarily a daily basis, but requires probably at least weekly update our street address guide, review plats for planning board approval that meets on a monthly basis, prepare GIS maps for both internal and external use, inspect the new structures that Julian does, and then mail approved plats to other agencies. We send them out both during the review process, and then after we've addressed them, after a plat's been approved, we send them out to those same agencies so they can put those addresses and approved lots in their system. We've got the ordinances that you see here that we've had adopted over time, whether it be mobile home park, billboard zoning. Electronic gaming was the most recent one that the commissioners adopted, and we have also the adult entertainment ordinance, in case any of you are interested in establishing one of those. Mobile home park ordinance was the first adopted in '71. We had a major revision in 1998 that changed some of our standards, but it deals with the purpose and establishment of homes. Since we don't have countywide zoning, mobile home parks are allowed just about throughout the county, and this establishes those standards that they have to meet to get through the approval process. We have 224 parks in Wayne County that are inspected on a yearly basis. We have on those, this past year, 133 of those parks met our standards as far as being approved. We try to develop a list, and if somebody has a park that does not meet the standards on a yearly basis, we would not allow them to replace a mobile home in that park until they brought it up to standard.
How many numbers of mobile homes establish a park?
It's more than 2 on an individual piece of property. So a person can have 2 on a piece of property, and it's not a mobile home park. The third one makes it a park.
What do you charge for an inspection on a mobile home park?
It varies depending on the size of the park. We have a minimum, I believe, of I think it's $35 per park, and then it goes up based on the number of lots. Probably tops out. The biggest park we've got is got over 200 lots in it. and I'm not sure what they pay, but the amount per lot actually goes down as the number of lots increase.
So it's based upon how many lots?
Yes, sir. So most will pay for the inspection probably between 50 and 100 for an annual inspection for the parks that we have in the
So
county.
that is annual every year?
Yes, sir. We try to do annual inspection. Yes, sir.
Do you waive that fee?
We waive it if a park is compliant for 2 years in a row, we actually waive the fee. And we try to use that as an incentive. You know, what most wind up getting out of the compliance zone is a junk car. And somebody will go in there and somebody's got an old car that's sitting there, and that if they might have had a perfect park for 2 years in a row, that knocks them back, and then they have to go 2 more years perfect again. But most of the ones that stay waived or get waived, stay waived. They don't fall back. We've had very good success with that.
What's a good incentive?
Right, the first year we did the inspections, probably been 7 or 8 years ago, we had about 200 parks at the time. We probably had about 50 that were compliant, only a fourth. And so now we're probably up to half that are compliant. Same ones are out of compliance every year. When we made those standards changes back in '98, what we started requiring was gravel streets, fire hydrants, street lights, house numbers on the homes, compliance with the stormwater ordinance. We still don't have a recreation requirement in there. Flood ordinance, which was adopted by the county in 1991. You've got a hearing, I think, tomorrow at your meeting on making some map amendments. This limits the use of property in the floodplain and also is designed to reduce damage from flooding. It requires that a person wants to build in the floodplain to make certain types of improvements to the structure, maybe elevating the property or protecting it from flooding. The maps that we first have were first adopted in '83, and they've been amended over time. We had the last major amendment in 2005 when the FEMA and state followed up with doing a major revision. We probably expect some revisions coming up in the next probably 2 to 3 years. We issue permits probably for about 10 structures a year to be built, remodeled, or replaced in the floodplain. We do about 60 flood determinations a year. Those are people that are trying to buy flood insurance or refinancing. The lending agency calls us to make a determination whether their property is in or out of the floodplain. Sometimes if a parcel is partially in the floodplain, they can get waived if the house is sitting outside. Sometimes it's not. It's up to the lending institution. We just tell them where the house is based on the floodplain. We also are a Class 6 community as far as community rated system for flood insurance. What this does is provides those people that have flood insurance a 20% cost reduction in the cost of their flood insurance because of steps that we're taking throughout the county. Stormwater ordinance is something that we've been having to enforce here in the county since about 2000, and this is probably the one mandated ordinance the planning department actually has to enforce. It comes in from the state. Wayne County was designated as being part of the Neuse River buffer rules. We have, although it's designed to reduce nitrogen leaving the property going into the water, and also to reduce the volume of water going into the water. We have about 154 BMPs that we inspect each year, and those are the ponds that you see out at the Walmarts or the sleep-ins and places. It also could be a small device inside of a subdivision, so we inspect those. If a developer is not keeping the grass mowed around the edge, we contact them and need to get the grass mowed. We also have, as part of that, a media campaign that we're required to do each year. We spend about $5,000 by participating in with other communities in the area from here up to Durham. The media campaign that you might see on TV or that has the stormwater runoff commercials that you see where it has the man putting out lawn fertilizer or different things. Those are something that we help pay for. And our share based on our population is about $5,000 a year.
Do you charge for those inspections of?
Yes, sir.
You do?
Yes, sir.
What do you charge?
I believe it's $35 also.
Okay.
Water supply watershed is on the western side of the county and from the Little River down to south of the Neuse River. And that's the area that drains into the Neuse and Little Rivers upstream from the Goldsboro water supply intake. What it does is regulates the build-up area in that area, dealing with the amount of impervious area that you can have on property. We don't have much of an issue with that because one of the things it allows is you can have in the residential areas 1/3 of an acre lots, which is what our minimum lot size is in our subdivision ordinance anyway. So as long as the developer's not going out, putting in curb and gutter, which we don't have out in the county, it's not been an issue. But it could be if we had a lot of commercial area going in and out along 70 West. Subdivision ordinance, of course, deals with division of land. Mostly in Wayne County, it's been for the purpose of houses or mobile homes. This establishes procedures for putting in streets, putting up signage, putting up fire hydrants. We don't require each lot to have access to public water. Most do now. But we say if you have a lot, for example, that uses a well and septic tank, you have to have a 20,000 square foot lot. If you have public water and a septic tank, it can be a 15,000 square foot lot. So it's an advantage for the developer usually to put that in. What we have is paved streets to DOT standards, fire hydrants, street lights, minimum lot sizes. Environmental health has to approve each lot before it's for septic tanks or has to have access to public sewer. We have a billboard ordinance that deals with signage along freeways and major highways. The placement requiring spacing between the signs has a maximum size. The area along 117 south of Goldsboro, 795 north, the NC 44 or US 75 house are designated as freeways, and they will not have billboards along those highways. The 3 or 4 that are along 795 are in Pikeville's jurisdiction. That's why they are there. Automobile graveyards, junkyards deals with the placement or the appearance more of junkyards throughout the county than the placement. It also requires a spacing between residential areas and junkyards. We currently have 17 junkyards that we inspect on a yearly basis. And that's mostly making sure that the fencing that is supposed to be there is still there. They don't have cars parked outside the fence.
Do you charge for those?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what do you charge for that?
Yes, I believe it's 50 a year.
50?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other than the charge?
What's the rule as far as abandoned or junk cars on a residential driveway? Don't we have a?
Well, right, we have in addition to having the junkyard ordinance,
Yeah.
we have a junk car ordinance.
Right.
And so if a person just has a car that's in their driveway that's been abandoned, there's no tags on it, then we would work with the person, try to get them to put it in the backyard, to screen it, to put a cover on it, to have it removed somewhere else.
So if they have a cover on it, that means they can have as many as they want?
Yes, sir.
Huh? Is that correct?
Well, they can as long as they have, and it can't be just a blue tarp on top of it, it has to be a fitted car cover.
Yeah, if it
Yes,
has a
right.
fitted car.
And if they're not selling parts off of that car, if it's just sitting there and they've got a collection of 16 Mustangs sitting in the backyard that they plan on working on someday, they could have those as long as they're not selling parts.
How about the 16 sitting in the driveway?
Same way.
Same way?
Yes, sir. As long as they're not blocking their neighbor's driveway.
Okay, all right.
Now, we had one out at Grantham last week where it was a business out there that was working on cars. But the cars had moved over to the neighbor's yard. They were blocking access to a business. So then we had to go out there and get them to move and get a wrecker involved to do some of that.
Thank you.
Zoning, of course, regulates the use of land throughout the county in those areas that we have zoning. We've got zoning around just about all of the schools that are in the area, in the county's area, around the airports and off the end of Seymour Johnson. We have had zoning in Wayne County since 1967. It's been amended several times since then. The map has, and also the text add like the heavy industry zone in the RA 30 zone. Some of the other ordinances that we have: solid waste, adult business, junk cars, as we just mentioned, electronic gaming. Our budget that you see there has held pretty much the same on our revenue side, from a high in 9 and 10 of close to 40,000 to, I guess, a low of last year recently of 11 to 12. We anticipate going back up slightly this year based on increased development coming in. So we think by the end of the year, we'll be up slightly above 30. But it's ranged in the course of the past 5 years between 30 and 40,000. And those are coming from the inspection fees, from development permits that we issue, from plat review charges that we have. And so when the plats reviews went down, that was what where the decrease was. This is on the expense side. We've had the increase in last year due to us purchasing a plotter that Chip mentioned, the large format plotter and copier came out of our budget. And then the increase this year was for us replacing our departmental truck that was about 8 years old when we replaced it.
Is that the truck that goes out, inspects? Is that, whose truck?
Julian.
Julian.
Yeah, it's a pickup truck he has.
My eyes are bad. So basically, this past year, you are at 380 some odd thousand?
That's what we think by the year's end. That's what our budget calls for, 382, I guess, by year's end. My guess is we'll be less than that. I'm sure we will, but at the total, if we were to spend every dollar, that's where we would be. Probably by year's end, we'll be closer to 370. And then the reason for the decrease was when we were doing the budget last year, Matt Buby was working with us at that time. He's since transferred to the tax department, and so the person that we hired came in at a lower salary.
So you're saying 13, 14, it's going to drop down,
12, 13 is what you've got there. That's the current year.
but 13, 14
Probably will have a drop from that, yes, sir.
to what?
Probably more in the line of 350, 360, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Because there will not be any large purchases that we'd be asking for this coming year.
So the GIS department is actually in your department?
The
As far as budget?
100,000, well, the 100,000 that Chip mentioned in his presentation is separate from this.
separate.
It's a separate, as far as accounting purposes, it's a separate department.
Well, why would you have an expense that was in the GIS in your budget?
Well, the plotter is used by us, by GIS, by any department. It's just, it was purchased had to be purchased by somebody, so it came out of our department.
Are you one of the 29?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, Chip mentioned we're one of the power users, so we probably use it as much as anybody else. One of the things we've been doing recently was for the benefit of buildings and grounds, facility services, all of their old maps that they have, all these buildings where they just have paper copies, we've been scanning them and getting them where they could have them in a secure format other than just the roll of paper that they have now for most of the buildings.
Okay.
Lastly, some of the goals that we have for the coming years: amend the zoning areas around Seymour Johnson as a result of changes in flight patterns, create a unified development ordinance for the county, which would combine all of our land use ordinances into one code and so instead of having 6 different land use ordinances. Develop a comprehensive transportation plan for the areas of the county outside of the Goldsboro urbanized area. Establish land use regulations around US 70 interchanges on those areas that we don't have it. And also, one item that I have, we'll be requesting in next year's budget is replacing the current permit and development system that we have, our inspection system. The one we have is about 10 years old. It cannot be linked to GIS just because of the way it was developed. What we'd like to have is put in a system where we can keep up with current owners and current GIS information, but that would be a charge, but it would be a one-time charge of putting it in place, and then it would be within the current budget that Mr. Croft mentioned as far as the annual fees. That's all I got.
Mr. Daugherty, go ahead.
On that, amend the zoning,
Let's go back to.
yeah,
goals.
that last slide you had up there, amend the
I'll let
zoning.
Marcia do that.
Am I understanding that you're bringing that back in away from the Greene County line because there has been a shift and they're not recommending us to actually zone all the way out in the northern portion out to Greene County?
Well, the noise contours have been adjusted, yes, sir. And I would probably recommend making some changes on the noise contour side. The actual zoning, whether it's RA20, R30, or whatever, probably when I take it to the planning board, I would recommend that it stay as is because the runway's not moving. And if Seymour Johnson were to go away, the runway's going to still be there, used by somebody, we hope.
For future missions.
for future missions. The missions
We're
may
always
change. It may be
recruiting
that
missions.
in 5 years, they have the planes change again, and it goes north out that way again. If we can limit development in that area by density, I mean, by not having large subdivisions going in that area, it will help us in the long run as far as BRAC process.
Yeah, but I believe in our visit to the base, they were basically making a recommendation of changing based upon flight patterns and so forth, which eliminated a long strip of that.
Right, and I agree that probably at this point, taking away it's twofold what we have out in that area from, say, New Hope Road to the Greene County line. One part of it deals with land use and density, how many houses you can have per acre. The other part deals with construction on noise reduction of the
Right.
structures. And what they're saying is we're not flying over that area as much anymore. It's not as noisy. If you want to do away with the noise part, I think they're okay with that. And that's what, I agree with
Well,
that.
any way we can make it less restrictive.
And that's part of what it
but
would.
still have the goals.
We would have the way of having it primarily as a residential agricultural area out there, because we don't have infrastructure in place for density anyway. But at the same time, a person wants to build in that area, wants to put a mobile home in there, it would make it easier for them. They wouldn't have to meet the noise reduction requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments on that? I've got one.
Yes, sir.
The first one, again, the changes in flight patterns, I was going to ask you, was that a request from the base itself?
No, sir, that was not a request from them. They just did their study, presented the results, and then say it's up to the local government, Wayne County in this particular case, do what you want to with it. It's just a
Okay.
piece of information. If we want to leave our zoning exactly like it is, we don't have to change a thing.
Okay.
Now-
And with that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was going to say, you know, what they do is when we have a zoning change, we're required to notify the base commander by certified mail
Right.
of that change.
Yeah.
And they will usually give us a letter back saying this proposed change is in compliance with our study. If they come back with a recommendation, they're going to use that recommendation based on the newest study.
Yes, okay.
So that's why I say we need at least to look at our zoning map anyway, make sure it's.
Well, there is a strong possibility of BRAC in 14, as we understand it. And with that, it's very important that, I know, Commissioner Dotter, you said less restrictive, but the footprint that the federal government now has in Wayne County with our zoning and ACO study that we did, you can change missions, but once you lose it, it's gone. And so they prefer, the way I understand it, is that once it's set, the footprint, you stay. If you change the mission somewhat, you can change it and you can adjust. Now, we only have one runway, that's true. But when you lose that airspace that you've already created, it's a footprint. And as they move toward different missions, they may come back to that footprint, but can't, because the less restrictive ordinances were redone. So I caution to be very, very, very careful when you are looking at these studies to go forward with the possibility of BRAC 14.
Yes, sir.
And the other part is the last one, establish land use regulations around US 70 interchanges. And I also would suggest that the county with these interchanges work very, very cautiously with the MPO and very cautiously with the the water districts that are in these interchanges to make sure everyone is on the same page as we walk through this. In 2035 was the time of the completion of the bypass. As we all know, it's been moved up to 15. So as I would just like to suggest, maybe using caution to take very close steps with the 70 Corridor Commission, the MPO, and the City of Goldsboro with sewage usage, and the sanitary district.
Right, well,
on that last one,
right.
when you establish the land use.
That's right. That's probably what we're doing with the Goldsboro urbanized plan that's being in the process of being updated now. We were waiting for that to be released and adopted before we actually come in and put any land use regulation changes in place.
And I say that kindly and not abusively. It's just
I think we now
make sure everybody is walking through it together.
Yes, sir. Anything else? Thank you.